Hi there, I'm Dr. Helen Sue, staff psychologist at Stanford CAPS. I use she, her pronouns, and I wanted to record this short introduction. I used to have a workshop called Grief 101, and we're not able to meet in person now, so I wanted to just record some real basic fundamental points that might be helpful information if you're new to the experience of grief and bereavement. One is to let you know about what supports are available at Stanford if you are experiencing the death of somebody important to you. And I think the most important piece of information that I really want people to have is to understand that there's no one correct way to grieve, to feel, to experience, or to act. And it's actually really confusing that often people will say things that make you feel like maybe you're not doing it right. And that's, for me, the most important point, is that you realize that we all have a very different process and grief journey. And you may have heard things about we all cycle through certain stages of grief, but not realize that actually not everyone experiences all of those or in the same order. And there are cultural differences and situational differences. So really want to normalize that grieving is something any of us who care about anyone or anything is going to experience. It's a necessary part of life at some point, but this may be new at this time. One of the key things is just to know that grief is not just maybe you expect you might feel sad, maybe you're going to cry, but actually there are multiple components. So I want to go over that. First, there may be physical signs, and that is surprising for people sometimes. Sometimes there's pain, restlessness or agitation, tension, real fatigue, and people don't always expect that. But remember that when you have a huge loss or huge stress on your body, that's real. Your cortisols, your adrenals are real, and there's a real physical toll to your immunity and your health that can come in the aftermath of grief and loss. Then there's emotional. Maybe you expect to feel sad, a little depressed, but there may also just be shock. You may feel numb. You might feel guilt. Sometimes when there's been a lot of suffering, there may be some relief mixed in there. There may be real anger at the circumstances, or anxiety about what does the future bring next. And it may just be numb or feel like a roller coaster for a while. And that's also very much within normal expected experience. You may find mental differences that are not just about your emotions, your feelings, but you may find yourself thinking about losses, having dreams about the person or persons who were lost, problems with motivation, concentration, those real mental faculties that may also be impacted, just like your body is, by dealing with the stress of what's happening and the adjustments that need to happen as life has changed now. You may notice social changes. Some people get really busy caretaking. There's a lot to be done. They really want to be comforted by people. And others really isolate and withdraw and really don't feel a lot of energy to respond to people who want to talk right now. And both of those are okay. They're different parts of a spectrum. You may feel like socially it's a time to redefine importance and priorities for yourself down the line. You might notice behavior changes, needing to retell stories, staying really busy. There's a lot to do following a death, but also there may be some avoidance there. Maybe you're creating an altar or going to the gravesite a lot, or find yourself talking aloud to the person. And that's also all completely normal. And finally, to think about the spiritual dimensions in your life that, a death may affirm or it may really challenge spiritual beliefs or beliefs about the way things work in the world. And that's another huge task, to give yourself time and maybe seek support to process. You may have feelings at times of still being connected or sense the presence of a person. And that's normal too, that we used to talk about that at hospice for a grief education class, that sometimes people felt they couldn't share that they felt they'd been given a sign or that they felt something still connected, because people would think that they were being delusional. But actually, when we're that deeply connected to somebody, It's not rare at all to have those kind of experiences. So don't let anybody ever make you feel like you're not grieving enough or the right way, because you're going to have to find your own path and your own way. We've had people come to the grief gathering we have at Stanford literally within days of the wake or funeral of someone they've loved. We've also had people come many, many, many years later, because maybe now they're in a different phase of life and they've been thinking about that person again, or they're able to think about it a little differently now than they were then. And that's not only okay, but very welcome, and it's a part of evolving. There's losses that I experienced in my life or family when I was a teenager that I understood very differently when I was an adult, or that you might understand differently at milestones in life, like graduation or special occasions and anniversaries. Just know that why it might feel extra hard right now: 1, you're at Stanford. You're extremely busy. 2, it's often unexpected that most younger people, as students are, don't expect to have to lose somebody in their life so soon. 3, often students will say their peers don't have a lot of understanding. When you've reached more of a middle age where I'm at, there's many people who share the experience of losing a parent, a grandparent, even a sibling, sometimes even a spouse. But when you're an undergrad or an early grad student, you may often feel that people don't have the empathy and understanding that would really be helpful. It may also be hard because of the circumstances. That can make things harder. Unexpected losses are much harder. Ones that are to circumstances which feel caused by another person as opposed to nature, that feels harder. You may be far away from home and away from your supports, and that's very challenging. So there's just a lot of newness to adjust to that I hope you'll give yourself time and think very carefully about how to take care of yourself properly. It's a new emotional experience, and it's definitely a new logistical experience. And so that I want to wrap up with pointing out that there are supports here to help you figure out your process. There is emotional support. For example, our grief gatherings, which happen at least twice a quarter, and we're actually adding more events in response to sort of the pandemic situation and what we expect to happen. But those are for company support, basic information. But there's also logistical support that sometimes after grief, our students need help logistically. Financial aid may have changed. Making a decision about taking a leave of absence or not, which is better for you. We've had students make either choice. Are you actually getting so overwhelmed and depressed and exhausted that there may be a need to consult medically or psychologically for an accommodation academically? These are all things that we can assist with, so you're not alone in figuring out this journey. The partners that do run the grief gathering and do these supports are the Well-Being at Stanford, CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, the Office of Religious Life, Res Ed, and GLOW, the Graduate Life Office. So we work together to try and support you in navigating grieving at Stanford. And we do also sometimes refer people and work closely with community partners like CARA for grief and others. So as you're entering this journey, please do know that you contact all of us. So CAPS, Well-Being, ORL, Res Ed, and GLOW. And we welcome you and hope that you won't go through this alone. And we want to share the experiences and the wisdom that others in this community who've also experienced grief have had to help make this journey just a little bit smoother. Take good care of yourselves, and please do contact us and follow up. And I hope these Grief 101, just fundamentals, can be a little bit of a normalizing help and a bit of grief education.